There we go. Okay. Welcome, everybody. It's been a while since we've done one of these, and so we've been meaning to. It's just life gets in the way, but we're happy now to be able to do this, and we'll try to do them more regularly. But this is one of your perks for being a CBI insider, is that periodically you get a chance to just kind of hang out with us and ask us anything you'd like. So we're really happy to be here, and we are ready to help you. So don't be shy. Go ahead and type your questions into the Q&A box. Before we do that, I wanted to know, and you can use the chat box for this, if anybody has any news they'd like to share, anything good that's happened in your writing career. Getting a book contract is great, getting an agent, getting an article published, getting encouraging feedback from an editor, whatever you've been up to that you're proud about, we want to share that with you. And again, when you do that in the chat box, type all panelists and attendees so everybody can see. And again, it doesn't have to be huge news, just something that you've accomplished that you feel like you're taking that step toward your dream. We definitely want to know about it. So please use the chat box for that. And go ahead and you just type it in and we'll get to them as we see them. And we can start. Laura, you have a question you want to start with?
Sure. Let's see. So Shelley asks, when writing a biography, is it correct to quote the person the way they talked, or should their grammar be corrected in the quote? If you are directly quoting someone, you want to have it be accurate to the actual quote, to the way they talk. So I'm not sure if you were quoting this from a in-person interview that you did with someone, or if it is from some resource that you found where you had their actual, quoted speech or dialogue. But either way, I think it needs to be authentic to how they're actually speaking. Now, it's tricky when you do an in-person interview because when people talk, they might kind of stumble over their words or add some, as they're speaking. So you can edit those out, but I would not change the actual substance of the quote you're using. So in other words, you can delete some of that filler stuff, but the actual substance of what you're using should be accurate to the way they said it. I hope that makes sense.
Also, the other issue there would be if you're talking about an ethnic or kind of vernacular. That might be something you want to be obviously careful with. So I'm not quite sure what you're referencing there, but if you have a situation where you're writing about somebody from the past and they are of a different race or ethnicity than you are, and you want to sort of do it as they might have been speaking at the time, it can get a little tricky there. So just something to think about, and that's where something we should be talking about at some point are like sensitivity readers. That might be an opportunity to use sensitivity reader.
And, I know Teresa dealt with this in her dialogue webinar for us. So at some point you might want to point that out when you show people stuff. But it's with vernacular, with things like that, it's tricky because it's tempting to sort of phonetically spell things, or you want to be as accurate as possible to the way people actually are speaking. And if there's a lot of dialogue that is very heavy with slang, vernacular, dialect, that kind of thing, that you feel would be hard for your readers to understand, you want to sprinkle it throughout, but then have your narration in between or your text so that the book is still easy enough for the readers to understand what's being said.
Before we move on to the next question, I am asking folks if they have any good news they'd like to share. And it doesn't have to be huge news. We love huge news. We got some huge news from somebody the other day, didn't we? Somebody just got a great picture book contract, I think.
Yes, she did.
But any news that you have that you want to share, any good things that have happened to you, we love to hear that, and especially if we had something to do with it. Pat says, and not sure what it means, but I submitted a chapter book to a publishing house who emailed me and said it's gone to the editorial department. I think that's better than a rejection. Sure is.
That is absolutely good, because if it's gone gone to the editorial department, that means that they received your manuscript. Editorial department and editorial meeting are two separate things. So that means that it's actually been received and it's gone to the editor to review. So that's good. It is better than a form rejection. If they say it's gone to the editorial meeting, that's a step up. That means that the editor liked it and they're taking it to the meeting to show it to the other editors at the company. So, you know, fingers crossed that it gets to the meeting. But anyway, yes, that's good that they got it and it's being reviewed. So fingers crossed for you there.
And Lisa says that she was awarded, I want to get some more information from you, Lisa, a Benjamin Franklin and a Most Choice. If you want to give a little more detail on that, those sound cool.
On those awards. Congratulations on that.
Yeah. Mom's Choice. Great. What was that for? Was that for a book, or tell us, please give a little more. Deanne said she had an agent ask for more of her middle grade novel.
Excellent. That is great. You got through the first round there of the query.
Picture book.
A picture book. Well, great.
You can go ahead and plug the name of the picture book.
Please do.
We all should know about it. Okay, Laura, you can go ahead with the.
Okay. Pat says, here's a scenario. You have 3 or 4 picture books to submit to an agent you have researched. Should you submit these manuscripts to the agent all at the same time, or submit one at a time, a couple months apart, or simply send them individually to different agents? Okay, so this is a good question. If you have done your research on agents and you know that you have your small group of agents that you want to submit to first, your top choices, you want to pick your one picture book that you feel is your strongest. Submit that one as per the agent's guidelines. Several things could happen then. Either they will just flat out reject that manuscript, in which case you can go ahead and send that agent a different manuscript if you want. Or the agent will come back and say, I like this, I'm interested in maybe talking to you about representation. Do you have any other work? And in which case then you could say, yes, I have 3 more manuscripts. Because agents always want you, especially with picture books, they want you to have more than one manuscript, because they want to represent you as a career author, and they want to know that you're more than a one-hit wonder. So you don't want to submit all of them at once. You always want to pick what you feel is the best fit for this agent and submit that first. Now, you could submit different manuscripts to different agents simultaneously if you want. There's nothing stopping you from doing that. There's really nothing stopping you from doing that. Just keep track of who has what. That might just get a little complicated for you. But, if you feel one manuscript is a really good fit for this agent and another manuscript is a really good fit for that agent and it would really attract their attention the best, then you could certainly go ahead and do that. At some point, the agent who wants to represent you is going to want to see all of your work. So you don't want to parcel out representation to 2 or 3 different agents with different manuscripts. You don't want to do that.
Lisa's award-winning book is Wilhelmina's Wish. And Deanne tells us that the agent that's asking for more of her novel was somebody she learned about in CBI.
Excellent.
Awesome. Love to hear that.
Good luck. And you'll definitely keep us posted on that.
And anybody else who's got news, whatever it is, we love to share it.
Yes. Let's see. Arlene asks, is it necessary to send your work to the Library of Congress to copyright it, or can you just mail it to yourself? So, Arlene, if you are going after traditional publishing, you're submitting to agents and editors, you don't have to worry about copywriting anything. The publisher will do that for you when you have a book contract. The way the copyright laws are is once your work is put in tangible form, meaning you have a document on your computer that is, you've got it in a file, it has the date on it, etc. That's technically copyright. So you don't have to worry about going through Library of Congress. Now, if you are self-publishing, you probably want to officially copyright your work before it goes to press, just so you have that extra layer of protection once your book is out in the world. But don't worry about doing it if you're submitting, because also your book is probably going to go through a lot of revisions with an editor. And if you've already copyrighted it, the whole thing's going to have to be re-copyrighted with all the revisions. So as long as you've got some sort of electronic paper trail on your computer, you're good.
Again, we have some questions in the chat box, which is fine, but if you want to put them in the Q&A, that way we'll see them. They won't get buried as the chat box moves along.
Yes. Bethany, what are some trends you're seeing in the picture book market? Good question. I am seeing, I would say the very, very hottest area of picture books right now is creative nonfiction.
By the way, anybody here attend or see Laura's webinar on creative nonfiction picture books? It was great. I can give you the link to it.
And there's some amazing creative nonfiction out there. Picture book biographies are really hot. Stories about ordinary people who have done really amazing things are hot. Books about science, about nature, about technology, but all in a very creative, interesting take on these things. Huge right now in picture books. So that is definitely the biggest, fastest growing area. I'm seeing a lot more what we call quiet books that are winning awards and are being published. And for a long time, editors were saying, quiet books don't sell, and now they suddenly are. They're hard to write, and I'm actually thinking of doing a webinar at some point about this, because I get asked this question a lot. These are books that don't necessarily have a really fast-paced plot, but are more emotionally driven stories, more about dealing with, you know, your best friend moves away and now you feel lonely, and how do you deal with that? Or, you know, those kinds of stories. Or lovely sort of text written in free verse or unrhymed verse, but just very lyrical, lovely text about the solar system, say, or you know, just an event in a child's life. So those books that are more emotionally driven seem to be very popular now. Again, the pendulum will swing back to plot-driven books, so if you're writing that, don't worry about it, because it takes a few years for a book to come out, so you really don't want to write too much to trends. But I think this creative nonfiction picture book market is definitely here to stay. And also, books that have characters of various abilities, various backgrounds, you know, very inclusive type stories, but where their ethnicity or their various physical abilities or whatever is not the focus of the book. It's just part of who they are. So they're more sort of just reflecting real life and the different types of people kids might run into in their everyday world. So those are some trends I'm seeing. And of course, humor is always good. Funny books always sell.
Here's a quick question for everybody, because we were just mentioning the creative nonfiction webinar. Laura is mulling some ideas for her next webinar, which should be soon. But do you guys, what would you guys love to see a webinar? So basically, for those of you who aren't familiar with the webinars, what they are is just like 2 hours. Last one was like, how long was that creative nonfiction? It was over 2 hours, wasn't it?
It was over 2 hours, but we had lots of great questions.
Yeah, but intense teaching from Laura. There's nothing that's sold. And, you know, we offer it for you guys, I think, for $47. Then we put it up on Writing Blueprints, and it sells for $67. So we're going to be doing another one soon. And you get lifetime access and a handout and all that. What are some topics, just off the top of your head, that you guys would love to see covered in a webinar? And
thank you, Kathleen.
As you're thinking about it, go ahead and type it into the chat box. Mm-hmm. You don't have to, you know, we'll paying attention to them, but Laura can go on to the next question. But go ahead and type in the chat box what you would love to see a webinar on. What's an area that's really holding you back?
Cool. Peggy asks, if I choose to publish independently, how would I sort through reputable publishers with fair market prices? What's your best research technique for finding the good, the bad, and the ugly to avoid a scam? So I assume you mean if you were publishing hard copy books, print books, and you want to find someone to actually create those books for you, and then you would have inventory that you are going to take to bookstores or sell. And there's lots of resources for that. I hate to just, plug a blueprint, but we have a self-publishing blueprint where Teresa, our instructor, actually lists the companies that she personally has worked with or has had her clients work with and that she says are really good. And I would trust her implicitly in that list. And off the top of my head, I would have to actually go dig that out of the blueprint to tell you who they are. But if you, that's really, I think talking to someone who has done it like Teresa is really your best way of getting this information, because she has vetted all of these resources herself. I know
there's also some interesting tech companies that are doing things to try to connect people. There's Wattpad. Yeah. I don't know if you guys know, but I have a podcast that I started called Disruptor. It's about people who are kind of innovating and publishing. And I have interviews coming up with both one of the top people at Wattpad, the woman who's going to be the publisher of the Wattpad imprint they're starting. And this week I'll be interviewing the co-founder of Reedsy, Reedsy, Reedsy.com. And they're both, and that one is actually really trying to put writers, illustrators, designers, publishers together. So that's going to be really interesting. So, stay tuned and listen to Disruptor. I'll put the...
yeah, he's got some great interviews on his podcast.
I have Jane Friedman just hit today. And if you haven't listened to Disruptor, I think you guys would really like it, because it covers a lot of interesting stuff about publishing. But when the Reedsy one and the Wattpad one goes up, those are some that you definitely want to check out. Looking at some of the things, a couple of people suggested quiet books.
Cool.
Quiet story.
Before we get off of this self-publishing question, I just want to throw out a couple companies that I know Teresa personally has used Lightning Source for hard copy books. I know that BookBaby, a lot of people have used that and they've liked bookbaby.com. And lulu.com is another one. Now, I believe Lulu is better if you're doing ebooks. They format for you and that kind of thing. But I think they also do print. So those are three you can definitely check out. Lightning Source, bookbaby.com, and Lulu, Lulu.com.
Yep. By the way, I'm just going to go back and plug Disruptor one more time. So some of the stuff we have up there that you guys would like, we did a long interview then you can listen to this now with Alex Newton, who if you want to self-publish, because this ties into self-publishing, he's a genius at figuring out exactly how to read the algorithms, and he does it for you at Amazon. And then he tells you the hot markets inside Amazon to write to. So you could listen to his interview. And the other one they're all great, but I would definitely recommend you check out the interview. It's one of the last interviews he did before he passed away, unfortunately. Todd Bull, the founder of Little Free Libraries, I had the opportunity to interview him, and he was a wonderful, wonderful guy.
That was very inspiring.
So, yeah, go and dig around. It's all free. It's Disruptor is a free podcast. So just
yeah. Very good. But the Alex Newton one was very interesting. And also, if you are putting a book up on Amazon, even just knowing which keywords to use is going to be so important to you, because you will get into niches with your keywords where you're not going to have as much competition. And a lot of the analytics he does kind of helps you with that sort of thing as well.
Yeah. So that's this one right here, cracking the Amazon code.
Yes.
But yeah. Should definitely check it. And also the other thing that we've learned, because I've been speaking to a lot of people now inside the publishing world, kind of about what's next, and audio keeps coming up.
Audiobooks are the next hot thing. Yep.
Is very, very big right now. So you might want to listen to this one. This is Kelly Lytle from Findaway Voices, which is allows you to create audiobook versions of your books. So definitely check that out.
Yeah, audio, I personally listen to lots of even, chapter book, middle grade audiobooks while I'm walking my dog. Very, very big right now, audio.
Yeah. Okay. And Carol, I will send the link to everybody, but just go to Publishing Disruptor, and then along the side there, it's in iTunes and Stitcher and all those other things. You can subscribe to it, whatever podcast listener you use.
Great. Okay, so speaking of Carol, she has a question here. Do two manuscripts I've written belong in the picture book world? Fiction. Obstacles entail figuring out how to earn money by solving business problems. My critique partners tell me the stories are fun with solid plots, but I find very few picture book comps. Tons of chapter books have entrepreneurship storylines, yet entrepreneurship/lemonade stand units start in first grade. Do publishers feel the topic is in picture book material? So she's asking basically, if there are no comp titles out there, does that mean this is a hole I should fill, or does that mean it can't be filled because it's not going to work? That's a really good question. When you're dealing with something like starting a business, you're dealing with certain skills that kids have to have. They have to understand money. They have to understand how to think about sort of long-range planning. And those are cognitive skills that arrive at a certain age with most kids. Now, the picture book audience tends to be younger than that. So there are some, I'm guessing part of the reason you don't find a lot of comps is because most editors have said this is too sophisticated of a concept for your average 4-year-old to grasp. However, there are probably ways you can make it digestible. And what I would suggest you do is, first of all, look at this series of board books by Ruth Spiro, S-P-I-R-O. And Baby Loves Science is the series. She has Baby Loves Quarks, Baby Loves Quantum Physics, Baby Loves, there's a whole series of them. And she has taken these really complex ideas and boiled them down to make them accessible to a 3-year-old. And so I would really look and see how she did that. And then think about what kind of, there you go, Carol said she's already got the Baby Loves idea. What kind of business would be meaningful to a 4-year-old? Because really, 4 and 5 is kind of your sweet spot for picture books. So, you know, how would that make sense to them? Now, some of these kids are getting an allowance, but they're doing very minimal work, you know, maybe some chores around the house. How could they turn that into a business? Could they do chores for their neighbors? You know, so I think it's a matter of taking this big idea and breaking it down into a way that the picture book audience can understand. And one of the things that I love to do is to Google Jean Piaget and his cognitive development stages. And you will really get a breakdown of how kids process information at different ages. And you have to make the way the information is presented processable to a 4 or 5-year-old. So I think if you would do some of that cognitive development research, it might help you sort of figure out how to approach your business. I don't think the idea is bad. I think it's doable. You just haven't found quite the way to do it yet. But once you do, you will be filling a very big hole. And I think that that is awesome. And as I said, creative nonfiction especially has opened up the world of picture books, and that will filter into fiction as well. Editors are seeing the sophistication of topics that kids can actually get if they're presented properly, and that is going to start filtering into fiction as well. So I think it is doable if you find the right way in. Okay. Kathleen, I'm looking for an agent. When submitting items, should I send the same manuscript to each agent I query or send different ones out? So this is a little bit like the first question I answered. And I can't remember if you weren't the same person, I don't think. So as I said with my first question, I think that you want to only send one manuscript per submission, figure out which manuscript is going to best fit this agent, because really your first manuscript is the hook to get the agent on board with your writing. Then if you have other manuscripts that are maybe a little bit outside their wheelhouse, but they decide they want to take you on as a client, then they're going to be willing to look at your other stuff. So I think you really want to fit the right manuscript with the right agent. So you can go about that however you want, but just do one submission per agent.
This might be actually a good time to take a quick break, because I know that Laura is probably tempted to answer every question with, well, that's in one of our blueprints, right? Because literally every question asked tonight is dealt with in the blueprint. So for those of you, first of all, are there any blueprinters here? Who's got some blueprints? And just go ahead and any blueprint or Manuscript Magic or any of that stuff. If you have any, just type it in the chat box so we know that you guys know. Yeah, okay. Go ahead and do that. But, you know, let me just, for those of you who aren't that familiar, I'm going to take 2 minutes and I'm going to show you what's new at writing blueprints, because we have a bunch of new stuff there that covers so much of this. Let me get over here. So the basic concept of writing blueprints is that everything about writing, revising, and publishing a book is broken down into step-by-step, right? And you get video, and Laura's there, and other great folks are there. So let me just show you what we've got going on right now so that you guys can pick what's right for you. And the concept, the basic concept of writing blueprints is that you pick the blueprint in the age group or category that you want to write. So let's say you want to write chapter books. Then you can get chapter book blueprint, which is down here, right there. You can get chapter book blueprint, and then you can get Manuscript Magic to revise it or any other fiction. And then you can get either self-publishing blueprint or manuscript submission blueprint to get published, depending on whether you want to go self-published or traditionally. So it literally covers everything. But let me just show you what's new. I wanted to do that here. We'll go to everything here. Oops. So basically now we have the entire children's category covered, because we have picture book blueprint, we have the Easy Reader Upgrade, which works with picture book blueprint, and you can get them as a bundle. Chapter book, middle grade, and YA. And one of our newer ones, which is for all kinds of writing, not just children's books, is magazine writing blueprint, where Carrie Flanagan, who's a great magazine author, shows you literally how to write magazine articles, sell them, and build a career doing it. So we have that. And then, of course, in the revised section, a lot of you probably know about this, but this is a product that has blown people's minds. Manuscript Magic, which allows you to revise yourself without having to pay for expensive critiques. And you get Laura's brain in there and Bonnie Johnston's brain in there. Not literally. And then under Get Published, when you go down here, you'll see there's Manuscript Submission Blueprint, where Mary Cole, a lot of you know Mary Cole from kidlit.com. She actually lays out for you exactly how to put together query packages, submission packages, query letters, all of that stuff. We talked about self-publishing blueprint. That is Teresa Funk. And Picture eBook Mastery is what Laura did on how to do Kindle ebooks. And then we also have...
And I have to tell you, just scanning through the questions here, every single query letter question you have is in Manuscript Submission Blueprint. It really is answered.
And then we have all these master classes that cover very specific things. But there's Emma Dryden. This one was, of course, Emma's stuff is amazing. This one was great. Book marketing without social media. They're all great, actually. Teresa is a terrific teacher. This one was really, really powerful. How to write respectfully outside your own experience. This is something that I know that we all worry about, right?
Yeah, it's very hot.
Especially now, it's people are very sensitive to when you write outside your own ethnic or experience.
Cultural experience.
That helps you greatly with that. And then there's dialogue, school visits. So I invite you to go to Writing Blueprints and check this out. And also everything comes with a private, at least the blueprints come with a private Facebook group. So you actually get help from the instructor ongoing. And you buy these once and you have them forever. There's no extra costs. And there's a bunch of bonuses too. So what I'm going to do in the, we'll continue on now with Laura, but I want to show that to you guys. Hi, Ellen. What is that stuff? I'm going to give you the link to everything. It's Writing Blueprints, which is a site that we created. And it's basically built around the concept that you shouldn't need years of a learning curve to start writing a book. You should be able to do it tonight. And when you follow a blueprint, you literally are learning while you are writing. Thank you. Carol has a whole bunch of them, so she knows. So you're learning while you're writing, and you get that help you need. It's a very, very innovative way. It's kind of counterintuitive to the way a lot of writing is taught. But our basic thing is, look, if you're going to go play golf, you do not take 10 years of lessons before you hit a golf ball. You just start playing and you get lessons, right? So this way, it's the same principle. So what I'm typing in there, and we're going to get back to Laura right now, that's writing blueprints, and I'm going to give you a discount code. So that is a 15% discount code. Just type April in when you place your order. It's 15% off everything, as much as you get there. So that's just for you guys.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to share my screen here to answer Paul's question. So he says he would like to start a face-to-face picture book critique group. Does anyone have any suggestions? He says, I know it's not smart from a marketing standpoint, but I've avoided Facebook due to their security issues. Is there any chance that CBI will offer a non-Facebook member chat critique space? So I'm going to share my screen here.
We've tried over the years a couple of different ways of doing that, and it was always a nightmare. But I think
we tried, but yeah. Now, are you seeing Children's Book Insider here?
There you go.
Okay. I've got two screens going, and I never know which one you're seeing. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, part of your subscription to Children's Book Insider is you also have access to our CBI Clubhouse, which is this site that just belongs to newsletter subscribers. And you log in here with your username and password right here. And you can also download the newest issue of CBI here if you don't want to do it from, I know John sends out an email link or a link in the email every month, but if you miss it, you can go here and download it. I want to show you a few things that are on here that you might not realize. First of all, grab your Insider member perks. If you are an annual subscriber, so you pay for a year at a time instead of month to month, you have access to our back issue archive. And this is 5 years worth of back issues. So that's a big bonanza there for you.
And by the way, if there's anybody there any of you who have been on the month to month for a long time, the reason we don't do that obviously is we're trying to prevent people signing up for 1 month at $5.49 and then downloading everything and then quitting, right? Because people will do that. Some people, not you guys. But if you've been with us for a while and you're on the month to month and you want access to the back issues archive, hit me up an email. I'm happy to help you out with that because the folks that have been here for a while, like I said, it's just to prevent people from coming in and grabbing 5 years worth of stuff and then leaving. Mm-hmm. But we really want as many people as possible to have access to the archive. So if you're not being able to access it, drop me an email and I'll see what I can do for you.
Right. Now, these are Facebook oriented, so Paul might not want to do this, but these are closed groups just for our newsletter subscribers. You have to ask to be admitted into these groups, and we always check that you're actually a subscriber before letting you in. And they are organized by type of book. So if you wanted to go into the picture book user group, it would only be CBI subscribers who are writing picture books. And here is where people put out requests for critique group partners, or they will exchange manuscripts with each other, that kind of thing. And then I would suggest that you would message each other and set that up off of the actual group. You're not going to post your work here, but it's just a way to find each other. So we do have this service for you to find other CBI people who might want to trade critiques with you or form an online critique group. And the various online critique groups that I have been involved in over the years, Google Docs is a really great way to do that. You can set up a Google Doc that you just share with each other, and you can each post your manuscripts. You can track who's commented on them, that kind of thing. That seems to have worked. In fact, in our Picture Book Blueprint and Chapter Book Blueprint Facebook groups, they have critique groups that have sprung from those, and they have been using Google Docs for a couple years now, and it's worked really well. So that is a way that you can find other members who might want to trade critiques with you. And again, you wouldn't be posting your work on Facebook, you'd just be contacting people. Whoops. I meant to show you some other stuff on here. So there's that. There is the knowledge base I wanted to show you.
And you could search right from the homepage if you want. You don't even have to go in here, but you could,
right.
This is where it's all laid out for you.
Search by topic, or you can go through. We've arranged, this is all sorts of information that we have accumulated over the years, and we have broken it into categories here, and you can click on any of these and pull up lots of great information, great articles. So this might be of great benefit to you as well.
I also like the search tool. Use the search tool. Go ahead and type, Laura, go ahead and type like agent into there. Let's see what pops up.
Hope this doesn't backfire on us.
See, and actually, you don't even have to leave. Go ahead and you just close it. Type it again there.
Try it again.
But also type it again so people can see. See right there?
Okay.
You don't even have to search. All this stuff is right there. But that gives you an idea of literally how much stuff is on the Clubhouse. And again, it's part of your subscription. So absolutely take advantage of it. And I just added a bunch of stuff.
Are short videos that I created answering common questions. Some of them are articles written by other people. So yeah, there's a ton of information here. So definitely take advantage of that. And then of course you can always come here and get your newest issue of CBI.
And also we have a bunch of bonuses. Go back to grab your member perks for a second, Laura. And you see where it says member appreciation gifts. Also, member webinars is where we're going to have this. We'll be putting this up by tomorrow.
Yeah, but you can also see webinars. The previous Ask Me Anything webinars that I have done. Right. You can watch any of those. Here's an interview I did with Rob Broder of Ripple Grove Press. He was awesome.
And then on the other pages, we have a ton of ebooks, courses under member appreciation gifts. Click on that. Because I know that we're taking a break here from questions, but I want you guys to know you've already paid for this. This is yours. I want you to have it. An entire course on how to build your own website. Great ebook.
Look at this book. This is an amazing book here.
This is all stuff for you guys, and just download as much as you want. It's all yours.
Yes. Now, some of these ebooks, we don't go back and double check the links if they've been up a year or so. So just so you know. But I mean, as far as inside the ebooks, there might be links to websites and stuff. We don't go back every couple months and double check everything. But
anyway, we just wanted to take a break and show you this because a lot of folks don't know that it exists. So just go to cbiclubhouse.com. If you need help logging in, just fill out a support ticket, and our support wizard Shelly will help you out and give you your login. And then keep coming back. But this is meant to be used, so we want you guys to know about it.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to stop share. I'm going to come back to my screen in a little while, but I want to keep answering some questions here. Okay. Julian asks, advice on querying for a picture book in which text is dependent on illustrations for clarity, but you aren't an illustrator. Okay, I got a lot of these types of questions. I got some by email too, so I'm just going to answer them all right now. Illustration-related picture book questions. Okay, first of all, if you are writing a picture book in which your text is very spare and a lot of the action you envision happening in the illustrations, but how do you communicate that in the query or in the manuscript itself? This is one of those rare cases where it's okay to put a few illustrator notes in the manuscript if something has to happen in the illustrations for the story to make sense, but you can't tell that just from the text. So it's okay to put little notes, a very short illustrator note in those particular places in the manuscript. If you are writing a query letter and there's some broad concept to your book that is going to be taking place just in the pictures, you can sum that up in the query letter in your synopsis of your story, and make a note in the query letter that the illustrations would convey XYZ. Now, you can't go into details like the color of a character's hair or what their house looks like, because that's probably not going to affect the plot of the book. So it has to be things that are more plot oriented, that really play into the whole overall meaning of the story. So You can definitely note that in your query letter as well. I'm just going to scan through because I got a bunch of other illustration type questions that okay, let me go back to two that I got from, okay. Linda asks, if we don't tell the illustrator how to illustrate and the characters are from different backgrounds, how do we indicate to the illustrator what that character's ability, issues, or background is? Or does the illustrator take the initiative on that? Or ... Yeah, I know, this is a tough one. So if you envision your characters to be of a certain ethnicity or have certain physical abilities that would be depicted just in the illustrations, if you can't hint at that in the text in some way, then you have to back off in your query and in your initial submission and not mention it. Once you get a book contract, then you can discuss with the editor how you envisioned this character perhaps looking, or say this is an opportunity to bring in some characters of different cultures through the illustrations, and then that idea will be planted in the editor's mind, and then they might communicate that to the illustrator. But if it doesn't affect the story, you really can't say it in your initial submission and your query. You don't want to come off as an author that's going to be too demanding or unprofessional or amateur. So it's a tough one, but you're going to have to keep that to yourself, at least in the initial submission stage.
By the way, Val is just asking a question about, it's a bit little administrative, why it shows up as me when she types her stuff in the chat box, because it's telling you it's you. I see you as Val. Everybody else sees you as Val, but it tells you, it's saying, hey, I just typed this. That's why it says me. So just so you're not confused.
Okay, so now let me look. I had two emailed questions that had to do with illustrators. Okay, so this one from Linda, she talks about writing notes to illustrators. And it is frustrating because for years, editors have said, don't do that. We did an interview in our Picture Book Summit online conference one year where an editor or an agent, I can't remember, just said, I take those notes out of the manuscript before I send it to the illustrator. So that's generally been the conventional thinking. However, you're occasionally going to see guidelines from a publisher, usually a small press, saying, tell us what you want the illustrations to look like. If that is specifically in the guidelines, you can do it. Otherwise, don't. You really can't. And I know that on some book jackets, you get the impression the author and illustrator collaborated. Again, that might be with a small press where it came in as a package, or it could be a pair that worked together that were paired up on a previous book with a publisher, and then the publisher said, I want you guys to work together again. Now I'm going to let you talk to each other during the process. So it's a very rare situation. Usually you have no say in the illustrations. You can't tell the illustrator what the characters look like, etc., unless it affects the plot of the book in some way. Now I had a couple questions on how do I find an illustrator? Or does the publishing company require we use one of theirs? In most cases, the publisher is going to want to find the illustrator for you. And they pay the illustrator. That's not up to you to do that. There's a lot of reasons for this. Illustrating a picture book is much more complicated than simply drawing a nice picture. They have to be able to tell a story with the illustrations. They add layers to the story that are not in the text. There's a whole design element that goes with each page. You have to move the eye from left to right. You have to do all sorts of things with the illustrations that most non-illustrators don't even know about. And certainly illustrators who are not well-versed in picture book illustration don't know about. So if you submit illustrations with your manuscript that are not of the level that the publisher requires, the whole project will be rejected. And you don't want that to happen. So in 97% of the cases, it's better to just submit the manuscript. Again, there are some small presses that might say in their guidelines, if you're collaborating with an illustrator and you want to send some of their illustrations with your manuscript, that's okay. Those are the exceptions, and you can do that. But in most cases, you have to trust the editor to find the best illustrator for your work. And often they're going to pick an illustrator who already has some name recognition to give your book a little more clout. So you want that as well. Okay.
While Laura's pulling the next question, I have a favor to ask you guys. So, you know, we think, first of all, we know that Children's Book Insider is the best publication for children's writing, and we know we give you huge value for a very small amount of money. You just saw what we give you in the clubhouse. We also know that writing blueprints is absolutely the best way to write a book and to revise it and get it published. The problem is we are literally up against, I looked this up the other day, the companies that we're up against, a lot of them are like venture capital funded. One company that we're up against literally just got $100 million in venture capital. And look at it, it's mom and pop right here, right? So we really depend on you guys. And I love that you tell us how great blueprints are and how great CBI is. Please tell other people how great CBI is. And
tell the people with money who want to give it to us.
Yeah. But really, it is the way we compete against companies that have $100 million more than we do. So the link that you'll see that I just put up there, let me actually, no, I didn't put that up there. I'm going to put up the link that you give people who are just generally interested in writing for children. And this will get them to our Write for Kids site where we have a free gift for them and all kinds of stuff. And then I'm also going to give you the link for Writing Blueprints. And please do share it with people. And by the way, we do have an affiliate program for that. So if you want to earn some money from doing that, let me know. But you know, if you love us, we know you do, and thank you so much, and we love you guys back. But please do, wherever you're out, if you see somebody struggling on Facebook, trying to figure out how to get started as a children's writer or anything, please do, you know, send them our way. We really appreciate that.
Jan says, we appreciate mom and pop. The regular person need people like you. Thank you, Jan. That's what we think too. These corporations are not going to sit here and answer your questions on a webinar. So, by
the way, mom and pop, tomorrow's our anniversary.
Yeah.
Our wedding anniversary.
We're literally mom and pop.
Mom and pop. So this is how we're celebrating our anniversary eve with you guys.
With you. Who else would do that?
And coming in May will be the 29th anniversary of CBI. 27 years for us.
The May issue. Oh, I need to make a big deal about that, don't I? I forget. I just forget. It goes by, you know. But yeah.
Next the 30th. We'll do something big for the 30th.
We'll do something big for 30th.
Thank you for the golf claps and the happy anniversaries. I appreciate that.
Thank you very much. Okay.
The gift, you want to give us a gift? Go tell the world about writing blueprints and CBI. There you
go. Okay. So first of all, Jules says, I got interest from my novel manuscript from a publishing company. Excellent, Jules. Congratulations, and keep us posted on how that goes. And then Jules asks, is a letter of introduction for a galley similar to a query letter? And I'm not sure what you mean by a letter of introduction for a galley. A galley, at least in my experience with publishing, and galleys are something that harks back to, you know, the 80s when I first started in publishing. They were uncorrected proofs of a book that got sent out to reviewers in advance of publication so they could start getting some advanced reviews. That's how I see the word galley. So if you mean it to be something else, please post that again in the Q&A and I will answer your question better when I see that clarification. Okay. Let's see. Arlene asks, what's the best way to land an agent and a publishing house? What are agents looking for? What are publishers looking for? Well, we try to let you know in CBI every month what agents and publishers are looking for, and the great thing about having access to those back issues is you can get a whole year's worth of that. Now, if you're using any of our above the slush submission codes from back issues, please note if there is an expiration date on those before you submit using those codes. Because we really want to honor, you know, a lot of these editors and agents are giving you access to them when they're closed to submissions from other people. And so we really want to honor their window that they give us.
Who's loving the above the slush pile codes, by the way? That's something we started about a year ago. And I think that's again part of what we're trying to just overload you with great value. But that's,
Yeah.
I think the answer to what a lot of people deal with is, how do I get the editor's attention and agent's attention? But that's what the above the slush pile codes do.
Right.
So if you're loving that, go ahead and type it in the chat box. But that's
Yeah.
another cool thing to tell potential CBI subscribers about. Hey,
yeah,
how special you are because you get the codes.
yeah. So Arlene, my short answer, and I hate to do this to you, but in Mary Cole's manuscript submission blueprint, she goes into great detail on this very question. How do you know what agents and publishers are looking for? How do you best approach them? How do you figure out which direction you should go with your submissions? It's a big question, which is why I can't answer it in, a minute here. And she totally covers it. But just to give you a little sort of Cliff Notes version, one really great resource that she mentioned that I strongly recommend you all check out. It's called publishersmarketplace.com, and it's actually a paid, it's $25 a month, and you can sign up for 1 month if you want, and then cancel. But it is put out by Publishers Weekly, which is a big industry publication, and it lists all the deals that have gone on that week, that what books have been sold by which agents to which editors. So you see the agents who are representing the book, you see a description of the book that they represented, you see the editor who bought the book. And it really gives you a great sense of what's happening right now in publishing. And then you can go to the agent's website or the publisher's website and look at their guidelines, and you can decide if you want to submit directly to the editor or directly to the agent. But that is just a really great way to keep track of what people are looking for right now. You can see what they're actually buying. It's publishersmarketplace.com, and like I said, it's $25 a month, and you could even sign up for 1 month if you want. So I would strongly recommend you check that out. The other great resource is Children's Bookshelf, which is a free e-zine that comes out twice a week, and it's from Publishers Weekly. So you go to publishersweekly.com, which is that trade publication I told you about. And on the home page, there's a little tab where you can sign up for their free e-zines, and you can pick the Children's Bookshelf, and it will end up twice a week in your inbox. And it gives you a summary of some of the deals that week that have been made. It also gives you book reviews of books just out, and there's a lot of great articles in there too about new publishers, new imprints, things that are happening. So those are two really good ways of staying on top of the industry. Children's Bookshelf is free from publishersweekly.com. Here, let me put it in the chat box, John, if you stop sharing your screen.
Okay. By the way, what you're looking at here, before we do that, this is just a little tour video that we have on the Writing Blueprint site for Manuscript Submission Blueprint. You can see we have query letters and all kinds of cool stuff in there. And remember, use the code April to save 15% off literally on everything on the Writing Blueprint site.
So publishersweekly.com for the children's. Okay, so, and then I'm just, and
while you're doing that, I'll do it. Here we go. Change things up.
Okay, so there it is in the chat box. Publishersweekly.com is where you would subscribe to the Children's Bookshelf e-zine. Publishersmarketplace.com is where you see the list of deals. And also, it's $25 a month. Great, Carol's working her way through Submission Blueprint right now. In Publishers Marketplace, a lot of the agents and the editors will have their own marketplace website, so you can click on it right there, and they list what they're looking for, etc. So it's a really good resource for you. So it's definitely worth $25 a month if you're really serious about submitting. Okay. La, 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 la. Charlotte asks, I found different advice on the correct way to use punctuation in children's rhymes. I'm still confused about commas. Does each sentence have to end with a comma or a period? No. You know, it depends on the kind of rhyme you're using, how structured the rhyme is. I was just rereading, by the way, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom today. Okay, so that book has been out forever. And that book does not have a comma or a period at the end of each line. So it, in my opinion, you want the period to go at wherever the sentence ends. If a sentence goes for 2 lines in the rhyme, then the period's at the end of the second line. The commas are going to be where they need to be to create a pause. Remember, rhyming picture books are meant to be read out loud. So any punctuation you put in there, the person reading it out loud is going to pause, or their inflection is going to go down at the end of a sentence. If there's a period, if there's a comma, they're going to take a little breath there. So this is all going to affect the meter of the rhyme. So your punctuation is just as important as everything else in the rhyme. So however it is punctuated to make the meter work and to make the sentences understandable to the person reading it is what you need to do. And so that is a very broad answer to a complicated question, but I hope that that helped you.
And by the way, Kathleen is just saying she's leaving. Those of you who have to leave, no worries. Again, we are recording this, and we'll have the full replay up, and we'll be sending a link to everybody.
Okay. I'm just going to answer this really quick in the chat box here. I think it was Glynis said, what is the difference between free verse and prose? So free verse is unrhymed poetry. It has a rhythm to it. It often looks on the page more like a poem. The book Owl Moon, a very classic picture book, a lot of you might be familiar with. I think it was published like 25, 30 years ago. It's an amazing book. That is free verse. Prose is going to be written like regular text. It's going to go all the way across the page. You're going to have paragraphs. You might have dialogue in there. That's regular text, would be considered prose. Free verse is just unrhymed poetry, but it has a lyricism to it, and it's structured more like poetry. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Paul says, I just completed my 3rd picture book manuscript, trying to figure out the best next steps, submission or agent. Well, good for you, Paul, for writing 3 manuscripts. That is awesome. And I think as far as deciding whether you go with an agent or submit directly to editors, that's a very personal question. A lot of it has to do with the type of publisher you want to get published with. If you see yourself as being in one of those big publishers, Random House, Simon & Schuster, you know, one of those, you're going to need an agent. Scholastic, they don't take submissions directly from writers. So again, Mary Cole talks about this a lot in the manuscript submission blueprint. But if you feel your book, if you want to go with a smaller press, if you feel it's got more of a niche market, if you would prefer to deal directly with an editor yourself and you don't feel you need an agent, you can try it submitting directly to editors. You can always then decide to try for an agent down the road if you want. So that's really, everybody has to decide that for themselves, I think. Okay, Perry says, I've read that school visits are a good way to sell books. Do you have advice on how to go about offering these visits to schools? Not to pass the buck here, but we have. That is a big question. And Teresa Funk created a webinar for us called The Ultimate Guide to School Visits. And she covered all of this. And the reason I'm telling you about this is not to try to sell you another product. I think it's $47, so it's a really affordable thing.
Well, it's $67 normally, but if you use your discount code, you get the cheap.
There you go. She's a master at this. She goes step by step. She shows you all the forms she used, how to contact the schools. She actually gives you the forms, the paperwork, how to take book orders. what type of information you have to hand to the school ahead of time, how you figure out what you get paid. I mean, it's a complicated question, and she goes into all of that. She also talks about how to get funding for school visits for schools who might not have the money to pay you. There are organizations that offer grants to schools or to authors to come into schools and give school visits. So I hate to just say by this, but it really does answer your question beautifully. I think that something that I would tell you off the top of my head is, well, two things. First of all, I know a lot of authors who are doing Skype visits to schools outside of their immediate location, which I think is a great way to be able to visit a school. It makes it much more affordable for the school because they don't have to pay your travel and that kind of thing. And so that is an option you can offer, especially as a newer writer. A lot of writers, for their first few school visits, excuse me, they may even offer to do it for free, simply so that you can get some great recommendations from the teachers that you can then put on your materials when you start charging. So I'm a big proponent in authors getting paid for their school visits because you can actually make some good money. I have a couple author friends who do over 100 visits a year. I mean, they make most of their money from school visits, and they do them all over the world. So it's a great gig if you can get there, but it takes a while to build that reputation. So you might offer a few for free, either locally or via Skype, and then get those great recommendations from the teachers and then start charging. I think also that you have to definitely remember your audience, and depending on whether you're doing picture books or middle grade or YA, you want to have things that engage the audience during your visit. You don't want to just read your book to them. So teachers really love it if you can work in some kind of writing exercise into your school visit. So that's another really good tip. Making it fun, getting the whole class involved in creating a character, or working on what are strong verbs, things like that. I think is also a really good thing to do in your school visits. So that's just some tips there. And like I said, Teresa covers everything in this webinar. So it's part of the reason we had her do that, because we were getting these kinds of questions. Julian asks, how much is too much in a query for a 400 to 800 word picture book? Yeah, it's tough to write a query letter. Your query letter might end up being longer than your book. I mean, it seems kind of silly, but 150 words or less, Julian asks, yes, that is a good, your query letter really is, you're stating what you're sending. So the title, the age group, the word count is sort of what you're maybe leading with. And then you want to have one or two sentences that sum up the hook of your story, encapsulate the idea in your picture book, and the part of your book that makes it unique, that is going to really capture an editor or an agent's attention. And in a picture book, you really shouldn't need more than one or two sentences for that. And then if you can quote some comp titles in your query, that is comparison titles on the market that might be reaching the same audience, or maybe have the same sort of tone as your book, to give the editor a sense of how your book might fit into the market. And that's about it. That's about all you need in a picture book query. Now, a lot of agents and editors say that for picture book manuscripts, you can also send the whole manuscript with the query letter, which is great, because they understand that it's just as easy to read the manuscript as to read the query letter. So you'll most often have the opportunity to also submit the manuscript. But what you really want to focus on in that query letter, that is the hook, what makes your story unique, and any comp titles, one or two, if you can find them, that kind of help show this is the audience that this book would appeal to.
By the way, for those of you who are teachers or teachers, the next month, the first week of May is National Teacher Appreciation Week. And so we decided instead we're going to do National Teacher Appreciation Month at CBI. We have a whole month of stuff for teachers who want to write for children. We have a free ebook, and I invite you guys, anyone can have it, so I'm going to put that in there. It's called Teacher to Teacher. It's amazing. We're going to have 2 free webinars for teachers to help them get started as children's writers. And we have other goodies. So we're going to have stuff all month long. So if you know some teachers who are interested in writing for children, we will take care of them. And it's all going to be free. So because we love teachers. So use that link right there and send folks to that, please. But we'll have more details coming soon. But we do love teachers. So we want to do something for them. And we know a lot of them dream of writing for kids and are super, super busy. So we're taking care of them.
Okay. I think it was Lisa up here asked, the book I mentioned with the word moon, an example of free verse, it was Owl Moon. I will put it right here.
For those of you who are watching on replay, I'm going to put the webinar chat on the same page as the replay so you can see, because we're typing in a lot of links and stuff. So you should probably see a link for it saying chat. You can open it up and all the links that we're typing will be there.
John, you got a question here. What about retired teachers?
Yes, absolutely. Any librarians, anybody involved in education, or people who, or if you love teachers, we're not going to card at the door to make sure that you're an actual teacher if you want to come to these webinars, but they're going to be specific for helping teachers. But yes, please, retired teachers, all of you guys, we love teachers.
Great. And Pat says, just signed up for the Children's Bookshelf and got a 4-week subscription to Publishers Weekly for free. Awesome. There you go. And so that's definitely worth it. Yes, I will get to all your questions. Don't worry. We have a whole bunch in the chat box, but I won't leave anybody out. But please put them, in the Q&A. Please put them in the Q&A. If you put something in the chat, I probably won't see it, so you can go to the Q&A and post it there.
Laura may have to get concise here.
I know. I tend to go on. I know that. I'm sorry.
I'm her editor sometimes.
So, okay. I'm going to be concise here. Janie asks, do the comps have to be by the publisher you're sending to? So the comp titles you put in your query letter? No. There's, again, a quick answer.
Good job.
Is the best contact person for school visits the principal or the actual classroom teacher? I cannot remember specifically from Teresa's webinar, but I believe the media specialist in the school is the person who tends to coordinate the school author visits. So that is probably the person you want to approach, the media specialist. Okay, Julian asks, manners of speech or colloquialisms might be unfamiliar to kids. Possibility of translating in brackets below quotes. It depends on the book. That might break up the text, especially if it's a picture book and it's being read out loud. I think that if colloquialisms, any of those things should be used sparingly, and you should be able to figure out from the context probably what it means. If you can't, then it's probably not something you want to use. In a nonfiction book, that might be different. You could get away with translating in brackets, but in fiction, you don't really want to do that. So make sure that within the context that the reader can pretty much figure out what this means. Or you can have another character, comment on it to clarify it. Okay. Ellen says, for picture books, having trouble editing, not submitted anywhere yet, trying to tighten up. Some descriptions I envision. Okay, this might be something I've already answered. Okay, so basically Ellen says, I'm an artist and have played around with sketches. I'm not an illustrator, but I might like to do it too. How do I decide or pitch it if I'm open to either way? So if you are an artist and you're not sure if you're quite there yet to illustrate your own book, what you can do is submit some sample illustrations with your manuscript. As a PDF, if you're submitting you know, it depends on the publisher's guidelines or the agent's guidelines if they want attachments or not. Very often, if they say no attachments, you can have some of your illustrations online and submit the link to it. But make it clear in your query letter that you are open to someone else illustrating your story. That is the way you would handle that. And then the editor or agent will have that conversation with you. Linda says, if you have in mind a series, should you tell the agent when you submit your story? It depends. I'm sorry, I can't do this one in a short answer. If it's a picture book, if it's fiction picture book, most often those series grow organically. The first book gets published. If it catches on, if the character is popular, the editor loves it, they'll come back to you and say, we could turn this into a series. So you would not have that conversation until after you have a book contract with the editor, and then you can mention it.
There is something I just posted, though, in the chat box. It's on the Right for Kids blog. It's an article that appeared in the newsletter about a year ago about how to plan a children's book series. So I recommend
that's if you are, and that's mostly for chapter book, middle grade, young adult. Longer fiction, publishers are often looking for a series. They're buying it as a series, and that's a totally different beast. In which case, you would mention it, but you better have at least a synopsis of 2 or 3 more books in the series, you know, that you can put in your proposal. And you would submit a series proposal, which is a little more complicated than just a query letter. So it depends. Now with nonfiction, again, sometimes publishers are looking for series, nonfiction series. So you would submit the first book, you would have a synopsis of your ideas for the other books in the series, and you would also create a synopsis of the series as a whole. You would talk about the concept that is holding these books together and what makes it a series. So, so it depends, like I said, on kind of what you're doing there. Okay. Carol says, what if there's no comp books for your picture book manuscript within the last 5 years? Can you mention older books and say that yours is needed because there are no recent books? Yes. Quick answer. What steps are involved in researching an agent? Quite a few. Your first step would be definitely going to their website, seeing what kind of books they publish, what they're looking for, that kind of thing. Many agents also have Facebook pages, blogs, that sort of thing that you want to start following, and they will post in there if they are suddenly interested in a new kind of, you know, a new subject, or they're looking for a particular kind of book, they're going to put it there. So it's very similar to researching a publisher. Look at their website and start following them. Publishers too, a lot of editors have blogs that they will often post, or Facebook pages, well, they'll post things about what they're looking for, what they're currently working on, and this is all great ways to research editors and agents. I think hopefully I might have accidentally deleted someone's question. I apologize if I missed someone. Does the quiet book concept spill into the picture book arena? Yes, those would be in the picture book. Young picture books for ages about 3 to 5, and even sort of the 4 to 8 picture book age range, those quiet stories I'm seeing more of. They are harder to write as a new author because quiet books tend to take a while to build an audience. So if you've got a plot-based book and you've got a quiet book, you're not sure which to submit first, I would go with the plot-based one as a new author. Okay, how do I find an illustrator? I think I covered that you really don't need to if you're submitting directly to publishers or agents. Let's see here. Is there a template for writing query letters that are going to grab agents and publishing companies? Yes, in the manuscript submission blueprint. I hate to tell you that. We actually give you that, as well as lots of samples of actual query letters from actual writers, annotated by Mary Cole as to why they worked or what she would have changed about those letters. But the things that I talked about in the previous answer is sort of the elements of the query letter are really what you want. You need that hook. You need to talk about why in 1 or 2 sentences, what's different about your book. You're going to give, for novels, longer works, you're going to get a brief synopsis of the plot. And Mary actually has a step-by-step worksheet on how to do that. And you're going to talk about comp titles, if you can find some, and anything in your bio that is absolutely relevant to writing this book, you can put in there. As far as, you know, you have 5 kids or you've always wanted to write, those things are not relevant in the query letter. But if you are writing about a topic in which you are an expert, for example, or the story, you have a direct access to this subject that you have interviewed in the book, or something like that, that would be relevant to put in the query letter. So, so those are really the key points there. Okay. Okay, Shelley made this really interesting observation. I noticed that many of my illustration notes are actually action notes, so I have been differentiating between the two because I know editors don't like too many illustration notes. What do you think? I'm not sure what you mean by an action note. If it's something, again, that has to happen in the pictures that you can't possibly infer from the text alone, that is important to put as a note to the illustrator. And I would call it an illustration note because that action will be depicted in the illustrations. So that's, I'm assuming that's what you mean there. Okay. Okay, so Jules clarified about the galleys question from previously. I meant galleys like what I would like to send to some people in the media so they get interested in writing a piece or mention my book on their newspapers, magazines. So you're basically their review galleys. So in that sense, what you would send with it is just a sort of fact sheet about the book, when it's going to be published, the name of the publisher, or if you're self-publishing, if you have a name for a publishing house you created or whatever, the pub date, where it's going to be available, if it's going to be an ebook or print or both. Those kinds of things would be important for the potential reviewer to get. And I would do a short synopsis of the book as well. And then, you know, asking if they would be interested in reviewing it or doing an interview with you, that sort of thing is what I would attach to those galleys. Okay. How do you, I think you mean to say here, Jules, how do you know which agents work for specific publishing houses like Random House, Penguin, etc.? Agents don't work for the publishers. They're independent entities and they sell your book to various publishers. So they are not associated with a particular publisher. And again, that Publishers Marketplace is a great way to see which agents are doing, you know, where their connections are, who they're selling to. And then a lot of the agents have their own website right on Publishers Marketplace, and you can get an idea of what they're looking for. Agents also on their websites will list the books they've sold, so you can see who they've represented, what publishers they've sold to, that kind of thing. And you want to find agents who are already representing books similar to yours, so they have connections with publishers who do the kind of book that you are writing. So that's why that research is important.
By the way, you guys enjoying this? Go ahead and type in the chat box. We want to know that you're with us and perky and.
I haven't put you all to sleep yet.
Yeah, go say hi and let us know if you're enjoying so far. Oh yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Is there a place for modern day fairy tales in the market today, especially if it is filled with humor? Absolutely. In fact, Dan Santat wrote After the Fall a couple years ago. It was a modern take on Humpty Dumpty. An amazing book. And I'm going to put it in the chat box because you should all read it. And this is a book where the climax of the story is revealed in an illustration. Now, he wrote and illustrated this book, but if he had just written it, that is a place where he would have put an illustration note. So read that book.
And in the back issues archive, you'll find our interview with Dan Santat. He's on the cover from a couple years ago.
Yes, he was interviewed it's got to be a couple years at this point.
Yeah, it's in the back issue archives.
Yeah, it's before this book came out that we interviewed him. Okay, Meg asks, where can I access the list of age-appropriate words? What if I can't find any books similar to mine? Okay, well, let me answer that first one. The Children's Writers Word Book, and I have it on my shelf back here. Let's see if I can grab it really quick. Yeah. Actually, I don't. Never mind. I thought it was really easy to grab, but it's not. There's a book. I'm so. We're so old school here. Children's Writer Word Book, I believe is what.
See, if we had $100 million venture capital, you can like virtually.
I would have had a little track. I could have just gone.
We'd be anti-gravity. That's what we'd spend our
$100 million. So cool. So wouldn't that be awesome? I believe it is, John, if you could look this up, I believe Writer's Digest publishes the Children's Writers Word Book. Okay. But if you could find that and put it in there, that is a great resource. It kind of lists words that kids either understand at certain ages or they learn to read at certain ages, and it's a great tool. Now with picture books, you don't have to be so worried with a controlled vocabulary because these books are being read out loud to kids, and kids have a comprehension of language that is far above their reading level. And so it's okay to add a few more sophisticated words into your picture books because kids are going to be getting clues as to the meaning of that word from the illustrations, as well as the context of the sentence. So that is not as much of a concern. But once you get into books that kids are reading on their own, especially those easy readers and the early chapter books, you want to be a little more aware of appropriate vocabulary. So this is a good resource for you right there. What if I can't find books similar to mine? I had to add more text to my book so my readers could get the plot. Is there any way editors leave the text in for the illustrator, then cut extra text after it's illustrated? Yes, that happens all the time, actually. That doesn't mean you have an excuse to write a 2,000-word picture book manuscript, but there are occasionally, if you feel you really need a few words here and there of maybe description or something, just so the illustrator knows what to draw because it's an important plot detail, you can leave it in your manuscript, and then very often once that illustration is created, the editor will go back with you and say, now do you think we can cut these words out because it shows it in the pictures? And yes, that does happen. So you do have that option, but I wouldn't use it too much because, again, you don't want your picture book to be bloated with unnecessary description that is going to be shown in the text, in the illustrations. It's a balancing act. It really is. And a really great exercise, if you guys don't believe me, take some of your favorite picture books that are written by someone who was not the illustrator. So the author is not the illustrator. And just type out the text without, in a document, double spaced as if it's a manuscript, and just read that without the pictures. You will be surprised at how much of the illustrations are actually implied in the words without the author actually stating what the illustration looked like. It's a real art and it takes practice, but typing out those texts for yourself is a great exercise to learn this. And even grab some books off the library shelf that you have not read, so you haven't already studied the illustrations, and just type out the words, cover up the pictures so you're not looking at them, and see how that works. It's really an eye-opening exercise.
By the way, for those of you who have Picture Book Blueprint, this is something, because it's so important, it's covered twice, two different ways we sort of approach it. But here's about book illustration, and down here there's a whole video, how to leave illustration details to the illustrator. And this is Laura. Laura is the instructor for this. So if you have Picture Book Blueprint, make sure you go back and look at these, because these will answer a lot of those questions for you.
Okay, let's see. We're getting to the end here. Janie asks, when sending illustrations, is it okay to send a variety of illustrations, including some not related to the manuscript submitted? Yes, if you are interested in being considered as the illustrator for your book and you want the editor to see, or agent, to see the range of your work, you can certainly do that. The best way is to have an online portfolio and send them the link. A lot of publishers and agents now are taking electronic queries, and they do not like attachments, so you can't attach your pictures. If you're sending it by mail, you have a little more leeway there, but I would definitely create an online portfolio that shows your range as an illustrator. That's the best way to do that. But yes, you can submit all of your styles. So Jules clarifies, how do I find an agent for specific publishing houses I'm interested in? So who work with the houses you want to get published in. That would be the Publishers Marketplace. You can also search there by publisher, I believe, and it'll show you all the deals made with that publisher recently, and you can see which agents brokered those deals. And again, in the children's bookshelf, when they talk about upcoming or recent sales, they will list the agent who represented the author in those sales. So those two resources are a great way to find that out. Meg says, so many picture books just seem boring. I know, it happens. Is there any place for an adventure book of about 1,200 characters? I assume you mean 1,200 words.
That would be Game of Thrones if you started doing 1,200 characters.
Yeah, adventure books, certainly. I mean, plot-based books are still great, and they still always will sell. I'm just seeing a resurgence of these quiet books, but they are not replacing the plot-based books. So absolutely. I think that if you can get your manuscript under 1,000 words, that's the best. But some books just absolutely need to be a little bit longer. So you're close. But I would still look at that manuscript and really try to tone it down as much as you can, or trim it as much as you can. I realize that I missed an online question here that came in, and so I'm going to answer this now. And this person will have to watch the entire webinar to see the answer. She says, can you suggest a resource or checklist for writers when they get a revise and resubmit request? She says, I don't want to rush my resubmit. I'm running my ideas past my critique group. Is there any other suggestions? So first of all, what is a revise and resubmit? This is a great thing to get a revise and resubmit. It happens most often from agents, but sometimes from editors who you submit to, and they are technically rejecting your manuscript, but they're saying, I really like this. This has a lot of potential. It's not quite there yet. I would be willing to look at it again if you revise it. And usually they give you some guidance for what they would like to see in the revisions. So I'm going to share, wait, I want to share my screen.
Oh, okay. I beat you to it.
Get off. So first, let me share my screen, and I will talk about a couple things here that might help you. Why is this not happening for me? There we go.
Nope, not sharing yet.
Wait a minute, I haven't clicked it yet. Okay, so are you seeing the Clubhouse?
Yes.
Okay, so first of all, yes, sending it through your critique group is essential, absolutely. And if you know some other writers who you trust, who you feel know the market that you are writing for, and they're not in your critique group, you might ask them also if they would, read it and give you feedback. Obviously, you're not going to just approach anybody, but if it's someone who's a friend of yours, etc., you want to get that feedback for sure. So in the manuscript submission blueprint, Mary Kolb had this worksheet that I wanted to show you that I think would be helpful. You can would also be helpful for you to do. So first of all, you want to break down, you really want to look at the consistent feedback you're getting. There are a lot of people are going to have different opinions, but there might be some areas that everybody is pointing out to you, and those are the things you want to focus on in your revision. So you want to sort of batch those together so you have an idea of what you're going to tackle here. And then you want to group it into areas of improvement. You might have several comments on, say, your character development. There might be a couple more on, say, the pacing of the story, that it kind of drags, or they felt the ending wasn't satisfying. So you want to really group these into areas so you know what you're going to tackle. And then you want to have a strategy for how to apply this feedback to your manuscript, because you don't want to just jump in willy-nilly. Okay, so getting back to Manuscript Magic, and this is a useful way for you to approach your revision.
And just so we don't confuse people, what you just looked at was Manuscript Submission Blueprint, which is all about it, which Mary Cole created, which is all about how to submit your manuscript and then deal with feedback. What you're looking at now is our revision product, which is called Manuscript Magic.
Right, but the way this is arranged is the way I think everybody should approach revision, whether you're using Manuscript Magic or not. So that's why I wanted to show this to you. You start with the big picture stuff, the story level. So and here are just some examples of story level revisions in Manuscript Magic to give you an idea of what this might be. So if you're getting feedback that the ending is weak or predictable, that is a big picture problem. If you're getting feedback that the character arc doesn't make sense, like your character starts out wanting to solve this problem and then suddenly they end up solving this problem over there, that's a big picture problem because it affects the entire story. You want to fix those things first. And then you're going to start breaking it down into the smaller stuff. So things like the way your character, for example, reacts in a particular scene. People might say this is inconsistent with how you've established this character. Then you want to look at that scene and figure out where you went off track. Maybe they say things like the dialogue doesn't feel authentic. That's something you're going to fix after you've got the big picture stuff. Then you're going to start tackling that. So the way you approach the revisions is very important. And then your very final pass is going to be those sentence level revisions, which are things like fixing your verbs, making them stronger, confusing pronouns, too many adjectives and adverbs. Those are things you're going to look at the very end. Those are the polishing edits that you're going to do. But you got to fix the big stuff first before you start attacking that little stuff. Otherwise, you're spending way too much time on your revisions and you're not being effective with what you're doing. So that's why we've arranged Manuscript Magic in this way. But as I said, if you can get your feedback and really group it yourself into those areas, then attack them one at a time, you'll be much more effective with your revision. And definitely take into account any feedback that the editor or agent gave you, but also run this by your critique group. They might have more, they might have suggestions, they might even be able to clarify for you why the editor or agent made these comments. They might have some insight. So getting that outside readership is really important. And take your time. When you get a revise and resubmit letter, there is no deadline there. They would rather you take longer and do it well than rush it. So definitely take your time and do it well.
And if you have Manuscript Magic or you're thinking about getting it, we generally talk about it doing a full revision on a manuscript using the tool. But one of the other nice things now you can see is that if an editor comes back to you and says the middle is saggy, instead of having to spend the next 6 months of your life trying to understand what that means and come up with solutions, you just load up Manuscript Magic and you get the answer. If Manuscript Magic let's say isn't in your budget right now, but you want help on that kind of stuff, again, that's where the knowledge base can be very handy. We have a lot of articles on the knowledge base about revision too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I might have hit everybody here. Oh wait, there's more. Okay. Paul asks, what is the typical cut for an agent? So an agent works on commission. They typically get 15% of anything they sell on your behalf for the life of the book. As long as that book's in print, they're going to get 15% of your advance, of your royalties, etc. They will earn that. They will make you more than 15% of what you would get on your own. So I think agents definitely earn their money. And then what they will usually do is try to retain some rights and sell them on your behalf. Things like foreign language sales. If the publisher sells those on your behalf, the publisher is keeping 50% and they're giving you 50%. If the agent retains those rights and sells them directly to the foreign publisher for you, then you're just paying the agent commission. What usually happens with foreign markets is the agents subcontract those out to a foreign agent. And so you end up paying 20% of the sale for the agent commission, but it's still better than giving away 50% to the publisher. So typically for domestic sales, et cetera, it's 15%.
One thing I wanted to chime in on that, because you can start seeing how the pie keeps getting cut smaller and smaller if you're an author and you have an agent and then it goes through a publishing house and they're paying royalties. There are times where you really should seriously consider self-publishing. And I'm going to go back to early in the webinar when someone asked the question about creating picture books and children's books to teach kids entrepreneurship. So if I was doing that, I'd be seriously thinking about self-publishing because of the market that could be reached. Because I'd be selling that to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
I'd be selling that to people who are entrepreneurs and have kids and who want their kids to understand what mommy and daddy do all day. And if you, unless you just are completely allergic to the idea of self-publishing, and again, I point you to Self-Publishing Blueprint, which will make it easy for you, but that's one area where when you have an easily reached market, seriously think about self-publishing and taking 100% of the income. Because I think that especially if you're writing a book about business, chances are you understand business, so you're not afraid of marketing a little bit. But if I say, okay, I'm going to write a book about, why does mommy and daddy sit at the computer all day, and what does that mean? And what does it mean to have a business, and how are they helping people, and what maybe if I want to do that someday, I'd say, man, I can go on internet marketing forums and go to Rotary clubs and go to chambers of commerce and on and on and sell that book to them directly. So there are times where I know that the default position is always, I want to get an agent or I want to get a book published through a big publisher. And for certain kind of books, that's absolutely right. But if you have a market that's definable and reachable, and you have a product that actually helps them, because if I'm an entrepreneur and I have a 5-year-old at home and I want her to understand what it is that we're doing and maybe start planting seeds into her mind, that's something I'm going to be all over. And it won't bother me if it's self-published as opposed to whether it's coming from Scholastic or something. So there is that question I think you should always ask, which is, am I better off doing this myself? And I think the answer usually is, if you are at all amenable to any kind of business type thing and you're fairly well organized, and is the market reachable? If you're putting out a book of poetry or a nice quiet book or an alphabet book and all that, there is no definable market for you, and you'd want a publisher to handle that sort of thing. But if you have a very specific market of buyers, I'm thinking adults here, who are buying for their kids, seriously think about self-publishing and keeping them moving.
Yeah, I agree. And, also, there's a lot of great things about traditional publishing, but the reality is, especially with a picture book, you're looking at 2 to 4 years from the time you sign that contract till your book hits the stores, because it takes that long to get the illustrator on board. The illustrator needs a long time to complete the illustrations. The books are still printed in China for the most part. They got to be put on a boat and sent over here, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So self-publishing, the other appeal of it is it can be much quicker. And if you want to have an input into the illustrations, you can, as a self-publisher. You can hire the illustrator. You can actually have input into what those pictures look like. So there's a lot of pluses. And if you hate the idea of marketing your own book, there are people you can hire to do it for you. So it is definitely a viable option, and it is a respected option these days. It used to be, when self-publishing was brand new, it was considered the last resort. And that is not the case anymore. A lot
Now
of,
it's really nothing more than the line on Amazon where you scroll down to it that says published by. And if you create your own good sounding name for your publishing company, it's nobody really cares.
absolutely.
Arlene asks, what's it cost to self-publish? And that's an impossible question to answer because there are wide ranges depending on, it's very different to self-publish an ebook or say a novel or middle grade book versus a full color picture book. Again, not to be a broken record here, but if you are at all considering self-publishing, the small amount you will invest to have Teresa teach you and help you in the Facebook group too, by getting Self-Publishing Blueprint will save you probably thousands of dollars, because that's exactly what she does, is talk about how to get the best for the least amount of money.
Yeah.
And again, if you use the code for any writing blueprint thing, that April will get you 15% off.
Okay. Ellen says, I took a children's book illustration class and the instructor covered submitting a dummy book. I'm confused and getting hung up with that though, since I'm open to just collaborating and submitting the manuscript with notes only. I just want my story out there before I'm 100. I understand. What is your advice on the dummy book? Okay, so a book dummy is something that you would create only if you want to illustrate the story as well as write it. And it is something that you would send either in hard copy or create it as a PDF that you would submit with your online query or electronic query, where you basically break down where the text on each page and do a sketch of what you think each illustration would look like. And it's very rough. It's just to give the editor a sense of how the story might unfold visually as well as through the words. And then if you sent a book dummy, you would also submit a couple copies of finished color illustrations from the actual book that you envision so they can see your style. If you want to just write the book and not illustrate it, you would not send a dummy. So that is up to you. If you feel your illustrations are of the same quality and caliber as what you're seeing on the shelves in Barnes & Noble and on the library, then you can take a shot. But you have to be very honest with yourself as an illustrator and say, can my book sit next to these other published books with these other illustrators and look just as good? And if you don't feel you're quite there yet as an illustrator, then submit the text. Don't worry about it. You will always have the opportunity, once you establish a relationship with an editor or an agent, to send them some samples and say, maybe for my next book, could I be considered as the illustrator? If you are writing the book, it is useful to create a dummy for yourself just so you see how the story flows and where the page turns are. That's a great exercise, but you would not submit that with your manuscript to an editor or an agent. Okay. Oh my gosh, do we have more? Oh, what percentage does a publisher get?
The big percentage.
The biggest part. Okay, so let me just tell you, your typical royalty rate, typically there's a royalty of 10% that is paid to, in a novel, the author. In a picture book, that 10% is split between the author and the illustrator. Now this 10%, back in the good old days when I started in publishing, was based on the cover price of the book. Now it is often based on the net price of what the publisher actually gets for the book. And they sell the book at discounts to bookstores. And the bookstore sells it for full price, and that's how the bookstore makes their money. So it depends on the publisher, but more publishers are going to royalty based on net rather than the actual retail price of the book. You have to read your contract carefully. But anyway, if you are a writer of a picture book and you're not illustrating, your royalty is going to be 5% of something. And if you are writing, say, a novel, you're going to get 10% of whatever this is. The rest goes to the publisher. And believe it or not, publishing operates on a very tight profit margin because they don't have a great business model. They haven't figured out how to cut their costs effectively enough. So
I will say they're not spending it on editors' salaries.
no, they're not.
I don't know where the money goes, but
No,
it's
they're
certainly
not.
going to the people who are working on the books.
Yeah, that's a whole other discussion I'm not gonna get into. So anyway, but that's your basic royalty, and most publishers will give you an advance up front against future royalties. So when you sign the contract, you get some money, but then when your book comes out, it has to sell enough that you've earned back that advance before you start getting additional royalty payments. Now you're all going to go do something else with your life, I know, after having that discussion.
And thank you, Paul. Appreciate that. Paul is enjoying the webinar and getting a lot of
good. Okay, Lorraine says, you hear about how it's important to have a presence like a website, blogging, tweeting, etc. I've recently heard that though it's not as important for picture book writers as opposed to middle grade or YA, because picture book readers are not necessarily reading those blogs. No, but their parents are, and teachers are,
grandparents
and grandparents. And picture books, if you're published by a traditional publisher, the biggest market for your books is going to be libraries and schools. That is way bigger market than bookstores, even though obviously bookstores are important. So teachers, you want to have a presence so that if you want to start doing school visits, teachers can find you. Also, agents, before they take you on to represent you, the first thing they're going to do is Google you. And if you have a Facebook page, I think it's important that when you're ready to start submitting, you create an author Facebook page where you put all things writing. And that is your author page, and that is what you can put in your query letter as your social media presence, etc. Because your personal Facebook page might have stuff on it that you don't necessarily want your agent, editor, readers to see, or it's just not relevant. So I think it's a great idea to start creating a Facebook page and maybe a Twitter feed that is specific to your writing. And you can use it as a great way to link to other like writing related blogs. You can start getting people to follow you. You can follow them back, and you start getting hooked into that writing community. Authors are great at promoting other authors' work. And so if you have some Facebook followers and you say, here's my new book, they're all going to be like, great, and they're going to link to it on their Facebook pages. So that's a really easy way to start getting a presence that is professional.
And this is just an example. This is Teresa, who's the creator of the Self-Publishing Blueprint, Walking the Walk. This is her author page. And you can see it's simple. It doesn't have to be super complex. No. But she tells her story. She's got a nice picture there of her wearing giant boots. Her book is called Dancing in Combat Boots, so she's wearing combat boots. So it's a good, nice, memorable picture of the author. A little bit about how she, who she is and why she created it, and then simple links. So if you're looking for a visit, there you go. If you're having a book club, if you're a teacher, if you're
so this would be an author website.
This is an author website, but above and beyond social media. Sure. But when people type your name into the search engines, you want to send them to something that is simple and clean and professional. And then if you have a lot of other information, you organize it like this and send people off so they can find what they need. So if they're interested in learning more about her books, there's all her books. All right. So it doesn't have to be super complicated, just nice and clean.
And an easy thing too, if you have time, you can create a blog where you blog about writing, about what you're doing with your book, etc. But I would not create a blog if you can't maintain it. You want to post to it at least twice a month. And there's nothing worse than going to a blog and seeing that it hasn't been posted on for 6 months. It doesn't feel relevant anymore. So you need to pick what works for you that you can maintain right now, and you can always add to it down the road. But one or two things that are specific to your author profile that you want out there online, I think is good to get started on. Okay, and as an older writer, self-publishing sounds very interesting to me. This is Pat. Don't have years to necessarily wait for traditional publishing. Your self-publishing blueprint sounds like something you might like. Since self-publishing field is always changing, do you update your blueprint? Yes. In fact, Teresa is going to do an update. We went through it actually recently, Teresa and I, and it's all very relevant. The exception is CreateSpace with Amazon is now part of Kindle Direct Publishing. So they've sort of folded it in together. It still works basically the same way, but the videos where she talks about CreateSpace, you now would just have to insert Kindle Direct. And we made a little update there in November of 2018. John, scroll up a little bit where you can see right under Getting Started, where we talk about this. But there's a couple videos that once the dust settles and everything is completely finalized with this, Teresa's going to go in and just update the videos. So she does update things as they change.
So you can see it's all, I know it's a big complex mess. It can seem that way, but when you break it down step by step, it's really not that hard. So, you know, everything, how to price it, how to get ISBNs, all the stuff that might seem kind of scary to you now, she makes it very simple. And, you know, she gives you the direct links and the forms and everything you need.
Yeah. Jules asks, so agents get a percentage of your 10% royalties. Yes, so any money, the publisher, if you have an agent, what happens is, and they represented your book, your royalty checks are sent from the publisher directly to your agent. Your agent takes their commission, their 15% out of whatever money you have earned, and then they cut you a check for the remainder and send it to you. But like I said, agents are usually very good at earning you more than the 15% that they're taking. They'll get you a bigger advance. They will retain a lot of those rights on your behalf and sell them directly, so they're not going through the publisher, and the publisher's not taking a cut. The agent is also really great at keeping on top of the publisher, making sure their royalty statements are correct, helping you market your book. I mean, they will help with ideas on how you can market, things like that. So I think, I'm not saying everybody should have an agent, but I think I think they definitely earn their money. A good agent.
One thing I want to drop in here, because we've been telling people this for 29 years, so it's good advice. Because Ellen just said, oh, you know, hearing how the pie is cut up and how you could not make a whole lot of money on per book, don't quit my day job. That's true, but here's the advice. We do know authors, quite a few authors, who make a full-time living writing. Here's the secret. They are prolific. They have their dream projects, they're the book of their soul out there, but at the same time, they're also writing to needs. They are writing to curriculum in classes. They are self-publishing when applicable, when they have the market. They're writing greeting cards. They're doing whatever they can and making a living as a writer. So it's not just, I'm going to write one book and make a living. That can happen, but that's a fluke. Yeah. But the people we know who are full-time writers treat it like a career, and they have multiple irons in the fire. So don't be intimidated and think you can't make a living. You can, but you're going to have to be prolific, but that's okay. That's, if you like to write, that shouldn't be a problem.
So my friend Stephen Swinburne is a perfect example. He's one of my co-teachers at the Vermont Writers Roundtable nonfiction workshop that we do in July. I think probably all of you have got an email about that because I sent it out to the list. He has been doing this for 30 years. He has close to 30 books out in print right now. Most of them picture books, most of them creative nonfiction picture books. Because he writes nonfiction, he has huge demand on school visits. He does over 100 school visits a year. He goes all over the world, and that's his full-time job, has been for 30 years. And he and his wife raise 2 kids. They own their house. They don't live.
Would you guys be interested in a webinar about that sometime? Like a paid webinar where we actually have authors who make a living talking about how they make a living? If that could be a possibility. So.
That's a great idea. That's a really good idea. Carrie Flanagan, who does our magazine submission or magazine writing blueprint, she also writes books, but her bread and butter is writing for magazines. So don't forget that. And the great thing about writing for magazines is it's faster, you get paid faster, you can have 10 projects going at once, you can do one chunk of research and write 5 different articles out of it. So there's a lot to be said for writing for magazines, and it also gives you a great resume as a writer, and you can still write those books, but as we know, books take a lot longer. So the magazine writing creates the money coming in. And if you're writing for magazines, be willing to go outside of the children's book arena. You know, you can write for parenting magazines. If you go on a trip, you can write a travel article. There's lots of options there. So, okay. How long will your April discount last, John?
We'll do that through the end of April. That seems like it makes sense.
Which is what, 6 days, something like that?
Yeah, but you know, I'll leave it up there for a little bit longer. I'll leave it up to the middle of May. How about that? But don't tell anybody. It's our secret.
Yeah, it's just between you and me.
Just between us.
Just between us. Okay. I think we might have actually gotten to the end.
I have one last thing then I'd like to leave with, because this is pretty cool. I just read this today, actually. But we haven't talked much in this webinar about coming up with story ideas, but I know that's always a pain point, is how do I make this story work? And there are times where there's conflict and you just can't figure it out. So I found this and I wanted to share it with you because it's from Robert Louis Stevenson. Robert Louis Stevenson called his subconscious mind mental brownies. Brownies like little elves. They used to be like little elves and stuff, not the cake.
Yeah.
So he had mental brownies that he called, and here's what he said. There's a quote from him. "My brownies, God bless them, they do one half of my work for me when I'm fast asleep, and in all human likelihood do the rest for me as well when I am wide awake and foolishly suppose that I do it myself. I've long been wanting to write a book on a man's double being. For 2 days, I went about racking my brains for a plot of any sort, and on the second night, I dreamt the scene in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde at the window, and a scene afterwards split in two in which Hyde, pursued, took the powder and underwent the change in the presence of his pursuer." So there is basically Robert Louis Stevenson saying his technique was to, while he was awake, ask his self-conscious mind how to solve these problems, and then he would often wake up with the answers.
Yep.
So the lesson there is relax. Just relax and let your subconscious mind get to work on it, because oftentimes when you're trying to consciously figure something out, you just make it worse. So and that's just a good message actually for your entire writing career, including marketing and publishing and all that. Just kind of relax and let the universe do some work for you, but let your inner brownies or your subconscious mind help you out a lot, because if it's good enough for Robert Louis Stevenson, it's good enough for us.
I agree. All right.
All right, guys. Well, thank you all so much for coming. We'll try to do these more often, but I'm glad you came with such great questions. And again, you know, we have the discount code for everything on Writing Blueprints. Anytime you need help, you know where to find us. Please use the CBI Clubhouse. It's yours. And go ahead, Laura.
I just wanted to add to that. If you have a question for us, please send it by email. Do not message us on Facebook, because I have about 8 Facebook groups that I'm managing right now, and that is going to get lost. So anytime, even if it's a question with where's my newsletter, anything like that, please do it by email. Otherwise, we might not see your question.
Thank you all for the anniversary wishes. We appreciate that. We're going to be celebrating that tomorrow. And again, please go out and spread the word on. We really need you guys. You are our evangelists to the world. We do not have an ad budget. We have a you budget.
You're our brownies.
Please, brownies, go forth and do our bidding. All right, guys. The replay will be up tomorrow, and again, we're here for you always. So thank you all so much, and have a wonderful night. Thanks for hanging out with us, guys.
Thank you. Bye.